So, I want to talk about Serum today, and I guess I want to start from why Serum is instead of what it is. Um, and uh, and maybe let's just start with what DeFi is. Um, what is DeFi and why is DeFi? Decentralized finance is this thought that, sure, one thing you can do with crypto is you can buy and sell tokens. But if you look at a blockchain, it's not just a way to move tokens around. A blockchain, really at its heart, is a full decentralized computer. And I think this is like one of the things that Ethereum really showed. And it's really Ethereum's hallmark, and it sort of changed the industry forever. That people realized that, um, you know, you can do anything on a blockchain. They're basically Turing complete. So you can program whatever programs you want into a blockchain. And that sort of led to the realization that, well, wait, could you program a cryptocurrency exchange into a blockchain itself? And the answer is yes, you can. You can sort of write out all the code for, swapping assets with each other, and you can write it directly into the blockchain. And that's what DEX is, a decentralized exchange. And the really cool thing about it, well, there are a lot of really cool things about it. One is that you kind of have to be honest if you're doing it. All the you make public the code, and it's immutable. It's just sitting there on the blockchain. Anyone can look at it, and then anyone can interface with it. And you take yourself out of the equation. There's no person running the exchange. It runs itself, or the blockchain runs it. So that's really cool. But another really cool thing is that anyone can use it and anyone can build on it. So if Adam comes and builds a decentralized exchange into some blockchain, and then Bob comes and Bob wants to build some, retail facing application, and they want to have the ability to trade assets in it. Usually when you start up a new application that has to have trading in it, it's a huge hassle. Like, you have to figure out how to build an exchange. That's sort of step one. And that sort of like makes it really hard to build new cool types of companies if you have to start out by building the old ones. But in DeFi, you can just compose with the existing dexes. You can just plop Adam's dex straight into your product, as if it's just natively built for it. Put whatever GUI you want on top of that, and you're done. And so you can take any existing decentralized products, and put them into your product. And that's super awesome, because it means that you can start building things by piecing these together. I think one of my favorite examples is borrow lending plus a DEX. So if you have a borrow lending protocol like Aave or Compound, you have a DEX like Uniswap or SushiSwap, you can just click those together and create a margin trading exchange, where all in one transaction, you send assets to the borrow lending protocol, you borrow something, you send it back to the DEX, you purchase with it, and now you've done a margin trade. And you can't do that in centralized finance. Like, if you try and piece two different exchanges together, one of which for borrow lending and one for the actual exchange, it's going to be a massive pain, and it's not going to feel like it's one product. It's going to feel really disjointed. So that's sort of like a second really powerful thing about DeFi. And I think that's key, this composability, this sense that projects can build on top of each other. Because without it, everyone is building their own little mini island, their own little mini decentralized application. And you're sort of back where you started, with everyone, trying to run their own company, instead of building this giant, exponentially growing ecosystem of applications that people can piece together. And I think that's where a lot of the power of DeFi is, or a lot of the power of the potential of DeFi. But you run into now one of the big constraints, which is that if this is your goal, you've got however many applications exist in this sort of hypothetical DeFi ecosystem, all combined together, all maybe composing with each other. And, they all have computational needs, they all have throughput, they all need transactions. And how many do they need? Well, I think it's actually a really important question to ask. I think it has really, really big implications. And you can actually sort of address it. And really what it gets down to is, how big are you hoping it gets? How big are you hoping this decentralized ecosystem gets? If your goal is to have like something which is the size of Uniswap today in usage, then you need 2 transactions a second or something. I think it's like roughly what Uniswap uses. Now it's super expensive. You're spending $100 sometimes on the transactions, but sure, that's a service, like 5 users at once, or something like 20,000 a day. Maybe 100,000 to a 500,000 total ever. But really the goal is all more than that. What if you want to build something massive? What if you have a vision for crypto and for DeFi, which is bigger than just one protocol right now? What if you imagine a world where 100 million or 1 billion people are using DeFi, right? A world where it's gone mainstream and where it's powering everyday applications. What does it take then? And I don't know, you can just look at these things, right? You can look at NYSE or NASDAQ, you can look at Facebook or Twitter, you look at Visa. And they all sort of, tend to take something between 10,000 and 1 million transactions a second. That's sort of the ballpark of what these sort of global scale applications really require. And I mean, that sort of makes sense. If you have 100 million users, and they're, each taking a few actions a day, you can just sort of figure out how many actions a second it's going to be. And so I think that if you want DeFi to get huge, you need to have something like 1 million transactions a second. And anything less than that is just going to be, that your goal is going to be that much smaller. Okay, so far it's been pretty high level, and just sort of sketching out some of those sort of constraints on it. What does this mean? Well, it means that you have to make a choice also about whether it's all going on one blockchain or whether it's going on a lot of different shards or blockchains or non-composable elements. And you could do it such that you just run like 1 million blockchains in parallel, each with 10 transactions a second. The problem is that they're not really interacting with each other. You lose composability, applications can't build on each other, and no single application can be any more than 10 transactions a second. Twitter alone is like hundreds of thousands. So like, say goodbye to anything that scale. So really you want this all composable. You want this all in one shard. And you want like 1 million TPS. And, if you get 10,000 TPS instead, then it can only get 1% as big. You're sort of like winning case that the like best that this can do is like 1 million users instead of 100 million users, which is sort of sad. It's really sad because you're sort of giving up on crypto becoming huge. You're giving up on it going mainstream, and you're giving up on it powering everyday applications, and you're just saying, yeah, it's always going to be sort of a niche thing, which is really not the goal. Okay, so now let's see where we are. So Ethereum has 10 transactions a second, and that's just the end of the story. That is a factor of 100,000 too low, and that's why you can get 10,000 users and no more on it. You just can't have more. There are no transactions for them, and that's never going to change. So you can give up on that. But, there are more things in the Ethereum ecosystem, and there's Ethereum 2.0, which will come out at some point. And that's probably going to get, a few thousand TPS per shard and then multiple shards. So you could get a lot if you put it all together, but no single application can be bigger than like 1,000 TPS, and applications at different shards can't compose with each other. Depends what your vision is for DeFi. At 1,000 TPS, you're going to be something like a factor of 100 to 1,000 smaller than the grand vision. You're going to be looking at at 1 million users max, and you're not going to be anywhere near one of the largest applications in the world, or at least no single application on it can be anywhere near one of the largest in the world. I think that's losing a lot of the upside of DeFi. I think it's sort of settling for something not so great. You can look at rollups. You get sort of similar stories. And so I think if you want to have 1 million people in DeFi and you really want to have it in a really powerful way and composable way, you just need to find a blockchain with 1 million TPS. It's just how it is. And there's sort of not much. I don't know. I don't think there's any way around that. You're just giving up on the upside if you don't do it, and nothing will ever recover for that. Like nothing can really compensate for it. So okay. So now you're looking at blockchains with 1 million TPS, and what are there are none. No blockchains have 1 million TPS right now. No public blockchains do. No decentralized ones. But okay, what's the biggest you can get? What are the roadmaps? And that's where we get to Solana. Solana is at about 50,000 TPS right now, which is enough to host like any one application in the world, sort of, or a bunch of big but not huge applications. But it's also still growing pretty quickly in TPS, and it's going to get to 1 million or so in the next couple of years. So it's sort of on track, on the roadmap to get to where it needs to get, although it'll take a lot of clever engineering work to get there. There are a few other blockchains that are sort of like trying. Most aren't. Most blockchains aren't even trying to get anywhere near 1 million TPS ever. And so you just like think that, you know, they can never have sort of the base version of it. So okay, that's sort of where Solana comes into this story. And that's why, that's sort of why Serum started building out on Solana, because it was one of the only blockchains which even has the ambition to get as big as it would need to get in order to host world scale applications. And so, okay, what is Serum then? Serum is basically an attempt to build out the framework, to build out the fundamental primitives and tools that could power an ecosystem of 1 billion people on chain. And what that means is basically thinking, all right, if you're going to try and build some massive on-chain product, what things are you going to need? Like, what are you going to really hope someone's already built that you can compose with? And, well, one thing is an exchange. A lot of products need some sort of exchange. And the really cool thing is that because of sort of the speed and throughput and cost effectiveness of Solana, there's a DEX on Serum, which is actually a full exchange. It's not just an AMM. It has an order book. It has a matching engine. You can place limit orders at any price in either direction. There's price time priority. It just works the way exchanges do, and it's live. And you use it today. And there's some UI elements that need to be made better. But it feels sort of like an exchange. It's fast. It costs 1/100 of a penny to do a trade. It can process thousands of trades a second, and it has 100 order books or something. It has market makers with like scales that are constantly updating. You can place your own limit orders, to make your taker. It's actually a full exchange, and that's super cool. And it's basically the only fully on-chain matching engine and order book based exchange that's sort of high functioning. So okay, that's sort of one piece, but it's not the only piece. What else do people want? Well, borrow lending. It's a really core piece of law financial infrastructure. It's the ability to lend assets out for yield, the ability to borrow assets to margin trade. And a bunch of people have built out borrow lending protocols on Serum. So there's Oxygen, which launched recently. It's in alpha right now, which is a fully on-chain, full sort of prime brokerage model of risk management and pool-based like trading and borrow lending. There's Mango Markets, which has a simpler, streamlined margin system built on top of the Serum DEX, just composing with it. What else is there? Well, AMMs. One really cool thing you can do on Serum is what Radium did. So Radium's it's an AMM like Uniswap. Same curve, same, you put your, whatever your ETH and your USDC in, and you provide in that same way. You get fees when people trade on it. But the really cool thing about it is that it's not a standalone application. It's composing with the DEX. So the way that it provides to takers is it sends maker orders on a Serum DEX. And the really awesome thing there is that means that it doesn't just get order flow from the people who randomly happen to go to its website to trade on it. Anyone who trades on the Serum DEX from anywhere will be able to trade against Radium. And that's the whole point of a matching engine, right? Is that like you can have someone providing liquidity on it and someone else who has no idea about that first person go and take that liquidity and trade with them without having to directly match each other up. So that's super cool. And it means that Radium just has the access to, potentially maker rebates from all the flow from anyone using Serum anywhere, not just Radium specific order flow. So that's something else which is live. And what else is there? One super cool thing, which I think is launching soon, is Media Network. It's a streaming platform. It's a decentralized. It's basically sort of like, you can think of it as like a sort of streaming platform, but on chain, like BitTorrent, but on chain, and allows people to coordinate passing content back and forth in sort of a trustless way. And it's sort of like obviously a lot of applications that could empower. You can look at Bonfida, which is basically building something which composes with a lot of the big protocols in Serum, and build sort of a GUI that people can access all of them from, and integrates them with each other. There are a bunch of wallets being built out there, other random tooling, and there's a bunch more on the roadmap. And really the goal is build out all of these products such that if Visa or Twitter or someone like that came tomorrow and was like, I want to build my thing but on chain, you'd be like, great, build on Serum, and already most of sort of the core things you need are there. You can just compose with them. You don't need to rebuild them. All you need to do is think about your product and your GUI and your positioning and your structure. And so one thing that'd be really exciting if someone built was a fully general encrypted on-chain messaging system and social network system, where you could just basically specify exactly which people had access to decrypt what you wrote. And so it could be anything from just DMing back and forth to tweeting to the world, or anything in between. And it could act as the backbone for everything from Twitter to GChat to Facebook to whatever other social networking you wanted to use, all on chain. And any application could build it in. Any application could trivially tap into the existing communication networks. You could even have type things into your chat that would cause trades to happen if you wanted, because again, it's all happening on chain. So that's sort of another thing that I'd be excited for. But then what's the end game here? So you have a scalable blockchain, which could theoretically support 1 billion users. And you have these core applications, which are used in many different products. What's the value accretion? In the end, the final step of this is then actually taking a version of a product that has mass appeal and mass use and putting it on chain, using the Solana blockchain and using these fundamental primitives built out on Serum. And so, if you want to then launch on chain Twitter, you could just do it, and it would just work. And all you'd have to think about is the user interface and economics and things like that. And one example of this is Maps.me, which has 100 million plus downloads and is going to be composing with Oxygen and the Serum Dex and other things on Serum to offer trading, investment, yield, and cross-border remittances to all its users. So anyway, that's sort of where Serum comes from, and hopefully where it's going to go.
Fantastic. Sam, I have one fundamental question for you. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is something perhaps from what you're currently working on and building, depending on your answer, will significantly help the millions of people out there in the world that are looking to join this whole crypto ecosystem based on the things that we as engineers are busy building behind the scenes. So there's two aspects, right? So when it comes to technology and adoption, there's obviously the engineers that we are, the software developers, the market makers, and everybody else who understands the difficult aspects of the tech and are building solutions that everybody else can actually consume, right? I mean, if we look into Google today, when somebody actually wants to, even the lame person in the far unreachable place in Africa or in a third world country who actually happens to have a smartphone device with internet connectivity and wants to be able to search for something, the first thing that comes to mind is Google. But when they go to Google, they don't ask the question, hey, how the hell was Google built?
Right.
How IP protocol works, so I can actually go ahead and do my search. So because you're working on the future, the decentralized financial ecosystem of the future, I'm envisioning a world where technical terms aren't necessarily actually part of the norm. But I know one thing, that if I need to do my banking, if I need to do my market making, if I need to do my my trading activities. If I need to invest, I need to go onto a platform that actually responds to my personal needs for me to be able to essentially actually invest, right? So how do you think, in layman terms, for the person out there that has absolutely no cooking clue of what DeFi is and what decentralized means, how do you think that you are solving that problem to respond to these basic needs? And I'm going to close on that answer.
Yeah, and I think that's a super important question. And I think that, like, it's a question DeFi is fucked up in a lot of ways, I think. I think that, like, in the end, that has to be the answer, is the pitch can't be going to 5 billion people in the world and saying, it's decentralized, it's on-chain, it's trustless, look at the number of validators that we have run. Like, they don't give a shit. And you go to Visa and you're like, look, it's on-chain, it's trustless. And they're like, look, those are buzzwords. We don't even know what they mean. Tell us how it will help our business or help our users. And the users are like, tell me how it will help me invest or help me pay money or do remittances. And, like, if you can cross that barrier, then you can get people excited about maybe the decentralized nature or the technology, but no one's going to want to use it if you can't make it a good product to use in the first place. Absolutely has to be the goal. And what I would say to that is, step one is building out the underlying pipes of this, building out the technology that can power it. But then step two is packaging it in consumer-facing products that are designed to be great to use. And, one way that sort of we've thought about this is, like, on other sides, like FTX and Blockfolio, where FTX, if you want to spend 5 hours a day trading crypto, I think FTX is a great product. If you want to spend 1 hour a day, I think it's a great product. If you want to spend 30 minutes a year investing in crypto, you probably don't want to see the word trailing stop anywhere on your site. You probably don't want to see maintenance margin requirements or like, and what you want to see is, I want to buy $50 of Bitcoin. How I do that? And so Blockfolio, it's like its GUI is just like, deposit your dollars or your Aussie dollars or whatever currency you have, and then, like, buy that much Bitcoin or Ether or whatever you want. And it's back-ending onto FTX. It's the same core technology in the back end, powering it. But the GUI that's displayed to people is, instead of phrasing it in sort of native trading terms, it's packaging it all together and making it an easy, intuitive, investing interface. And that's what needs to happen with DeFi, is that people need to then take these primitives, right? Take the DEX, and instead of saying, hey guys, here's a DEX, here's where you can go get your decentralized wallet, here's how you deal with your secret keys. Instead, what they need to say is, look, here's a website, you go here, and you just log in, and then you can invest. And it's back-ending onto those same products. But a huge part of this, as you said, is actually, in the end, building UIs and wrappers that make it make sense to most people, make sense to people who aren't crypto native, who aren't DeFi native. That's absolutely huge. And, hopefully Maps.me will be one step in that direction as a mass consumer application that's going to be, just showing people, hey, click this button to earn yield on your assets. But on the back end is using, an on-chain prime brokerage protocol back-ending onto a Serum DEX.
Absolutely. Sam, thank you very much indeed for your contribution.
Thank you.